Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Sister Gloria Loya. I am Sister of the Presentation, but I work for the Diocese of Monterey. I've been here about a month, so you're helping to form me in this work. We thought we might just take a minute to quiet down, let everything that is on our minds and hearts and our concerns, just let them in God's hands and take a moment of silence. And whatever our religious background is, doesn't matter, we join together for a moment of silence, that our God may accompany us as we do this important work, and also for all of those who have suffered and are suffering from human trafficking. Let's just take a moment. Amen. Amen. And I have the pleasure, and I hope he's there, Bishop Garcia. Oh.
I'm right here.
Okay, Bishop, I have the pleasure of, in case you don't know who he is, the Bishop of the Diocese of Monterey, Bishop Richard Garcia. Welcome, Bishop. We're in your hands.
Thank you very much. Wonderful to be with all of you. Very glad that you gathered here this evening. It was a pleasure to meet Carissa a few years ago. And I had the privilege of converting her in our church family. She's a great spokeswoman for this cause. And we really have to take it seriously. I thank all of you for taking the time to be here this evening. And I so appreciate all that you're doing and will do to put an end to all human trafficking in our own area and throughout the world as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm Eunice, and can you hear me back there? Okay. First of all, I want to thank a few people who helped out with this quite a bit. First of all, the two people that volunteered first, very quickly, were Jim Burrows, Deacon Jim Burrows, and Liz Clark. And then our social justice ministry, and Moira Wunderlich back there was the one that got the refreshments started. So when you get a chance, you can enjoy some goodies. Okay. I also want to thank my daughter. She is my computer expert and gets me out of computer trouble. And she's also a good editor. And she read everything I wrote, and she says, "Why don't you say this instead or take this out?" Very good. So I appreciate that. And to introduce Carissa, I have a lot of respect for Carissa, a lot of admiration for Carissa, for what she's gone through and how she's recovered. Her determination and her strength has been fantastic. And just to give a real quick background, once she escaped from the horrific problems she was involved in, not through her fault at all, then she taught herself mathematics. And she managed to get herself through high school and then on to Cuesta College. And from there, you went to Fresno State, right? And summa cum laude, and with a BA in mathematics. And she taught school at the Hanford High School for a few years, and then decided to go for more education. Okay, and then from there you went to UCLA, and she managed to get an MBA at UCLA and a Juris Doctorate, so she's a lawyer. And the lawyer obviously would help very much in the work she's doing now, especially with youngsters that end up incarcerated and need to go through the process of law in the courts. Okay, let's see what else I say. She also wrote a book called Runaway Girl, which Rebecca's bringing some books in pretty soon. Oh, she's here. Good. So there's some books back there if you're interested in getting a book. How much are they?
They're just suggested whatever you pull out of your...
So it's kind of a free will offering for a book, okay?
Just read it and pull out whatever you could make an
Yeah.
offering for.
Yeah, okay. So that's a good price. So
Yes.
whatever you want to do, that's good. Okay, let me see. Yeah, there's some other things that Chris has done that I think are interesting. One, after she wrote the book, she was asked to do a documentary, to be part of a documentary on her life. And that was a very successful documentary and was an award-winning documentary. And that was in 2012, is that right?
Well, it came out just before the book.
Just before the book, yeah. Okay. And she's also was involved in an organization called Respect. Try to remember what that is.
On the inside.
Respect on
On the inside.
Respect on the Inside. Yeah, that was very good. What they did was they worked with about 30,000 youngsters who are
Incarcerated.
they were incarcerated. Yeah, so 30,000 of those, and also for youngsters who were in foster care. Yeah, so those are some of her, just some few of her qualifications for speaking tonight. So I'd like to introduce Chris to you. Thank you.
So I am so happy to be here tonight. This is different for me than any other event. I am bringing in people that are local experts here tonight, and I'm going to introduce them all to you because they are what is going to make the impact in our community along with your help and your support. So I'm going to introduce all of our panelists here, and then I'll share a little bit, and Rebecca, please join us. Yes. And then I'll share a little bit about my journey and why this night is special for me personally, and why I think it's important for the faith community to not just be a part of this, but really to be leading the way in responding to human trafficking. So first off, I'm going to introduce your stellar panel, which is amazing that they came together all in one evening and all the work that they have to do all of the time that they do for this community. And what is amazing about this panel for me is that we have the potential to build a model to respond to commercial sexual exploitation of children here in San Luis Obispo County because of the willingness and because of the relationships that we already have and the level of expertise that's here at this table that's come together. So I will introduce everyone, and then you'll be able to hear from each of them a short presentation on what they do in the community and how they work in the area of human trafficking. And then we'll have some time for question and answers. And then we reserve some time also for networking. And you have some note cards on your chairs, yes? And maybe something to write with, or someone will lend you something. If a question pops up now or during the time that any of the panelists present, you're free to write that question and the person's name or description if you forget the name, because we don't have name cards up here. But if you want to write a question, then we'll be collecting these for the Q&A portion and getting those answered for you as best we can. Not that we don't have all the answers yet, but so Tracy Shiro's here, and she's from Department of Social Services and the assistant director. Yes, so she's and she's been at the front of this, at the front of finding a solution, and also shows a great willingness to work together, and also is our member of our faith community and plays an important role there. John Nibio, who's with Family Care Network, also a faith-based effort and professional effort to respond, and they're coming together with Department of Social Services. And Sister Gloria is the bishop's cousin, no. And so you want a direct tie-in. So she's important issue is to him. She's working on human trafficking.
Nepotism.
She's working on human trafficking and fighting human trafficking, and she's here with us and will be really spearheading and be a connector again for. She crosses different counties, regions. She's in San Jose, Berkeley, Monterey, all of them, San Luis Obispo, within a matter of a few days. So we really appreciate all the work that she's already doing and the connections she has. So,
You guys.
yes, she will be our messenger for sure and help catalyze some things. Thank you. And Greg Devitt, who's with the district attorney's office, and he's the prosecutor, yes?
Yes.
And he's also a member of our church family, and I asked him before he started if this was the first time he's been on a panel with his mother present, but no, his parents are present. So, so I'm extra. I think that's extra special. This is the type of panel I wanted tonight. This is the type of family and community that I wanted to bring here. This is what will make us cutting edge. Is having this make it a community effort. And Commander Brenda Troba is with Cal Poly Police, but she also has decades of experience on fighting human trafficking before we were calling it human trafficking, before we were calling it a fight against human trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation. She was assisting with investigating rings of trafficking and gang trafficking, which is one of the most violent and most terrifying ways of being trafficked because gangs are involved and it's terrorizing with gangs. So I'm so happy to bring her on the panel and to be able to bring her into this community and this conversation as well with her experience. And Rebecca Turner, who is the co-founder and also director now of Mountain Brook Abolitionists. She spearheaded the faith-based movement in this region. So Mountain Brook Abolitionists hosts an annual conference. They're also doing a movie night that you brought flyers on, and
Hundreds of flyers.
this is their step toward awareness here. When you say, "What's my next step?" and if you're interested in labor trafficking, tomorrow night they're showing Dark Side of Chocolate, child labor trafficking in the chocolate industry, and they'll have Mama Ganache.
Mama Ganache is going to share.
They always bring chocolate, so bring your dollars too for that offering. And she's been wonderful as well as her team at Mountain Brook in building a community effort and response, and she's responsible really for all of us being here right now today, so thank you. And you're going to hear from each one of them on what they do, but this is a special night for me. Eunice, I was tearing up when you were reading that, because you weren't even reading notes most of the time, you were just know me.
Yeah.
And Eunice and I got to know each other in RCIA. And she is among the strongest women that I know, and she is brilliant, and she worked on building church relationships to have the overflow homeless shelters here in the region, and it seems like such a simple solution, but it's so complex, and you came up with it, and it wasn't emails, it was going door to door, and it was making relationships, and it was face to face, and so she brings that here, and when I met Eunice, I had all those degrees, and I had that documentary, and I had a book deal, and I was writing a book, but I had no idea what it was all about, how it was all connected, and how I was going to make it really matter in my life, until I walked into RCIA, and to Terry and to Jim and to the conversations we would have. The room I call a womb. It's like my spirit was nurtured. I was encouraged. They are responsible for the book as much as I am, as much as anybody else is, because they cheered me on, they sat with me, and they allowed me just to be me. And if the book failed and everything didn't work out, I would still have a place and I would still have a home. And that's really where I came into finding my spiritual home. Because I had been homeless for a long time, and putting a roof over your head is one thing, but then coming home spiritually and really feeling connected to a family and a community spiritually was very new for me and different. And so this is special. I do this work, I do it as work, but that's not tonight. Tonight is about what some people try to break in us when we're trafficked. It's about our spirit. And our spirit cannot be broken. I see survivors, fortunately, almost every day. And I see their spirit. And I see how alive they are. And how love and nurturing and bringing them home and giving them a place and a safe place, what that can do for them. And it's bad news for traffickers because they can't be broken. Traffickers want to believe that they could own someone, that they could control them, that they could even break them, but they can't be broken. So tonight we're talking about the bonds of trafficking, right? We're talking about what is that? What is that bond? Because that's the question usually people ask if they see someone who is being trafficked. Whether it's labor trafficking or sex trafficking, whether it's adult sex trafficking or child sex trafficking, usually the question they ask usually is, why don't they just leave? Why don't they just leave? And that bond is a belief that this person is going to provide something for them. It's a promise that that person makes to them. But it's not only that, it's what society, and I never thought I'd be one of these people to say, media, but if you look at what's on the radio, what your children or students or grandchildren are listening to, and even I was doing a training recently, 4-year-olds singing to Nicki Minaj about sexual acts and favors for items, for something, as if it's equal. And somebody is profiting off of that, right? So their goal is to make that person, that victim, believe that they're worth nothing, that the only value that they have is for working for them. Whether it's in a caste system, a slave system, or our media system that we've created in the US that promotes trafficking and promotes this sex for money idea. Wherever it is, it's that idea that you're not worth any more than this. This is your value. This is what you're worth. And we as a spiritual community have the only real response to that. Because we're the only ones that can come in and say, you're more valuable. You're worth more. And not because of what you have, not because of what I give you, not because of how I dress you, not because of how you're made up or the degrees that you have, but just because you are. Just because you are. And this is the only place that can happen, is in our spiritual community. That's it. We can't ask government to do that. They could do a lot of other things, but we can't ask them to do that. We're not going to ask police to do all of that, but we can ask our faith community to work alongside of the partners, that they have that ability to offer that hope to someone, to let them know that they're worth more. I knew that I was worth more because of just small things that people did. I had a meeting today, and it might result in something really big, like a boarding school or a house or a home for survivors. How awesome, right? If that happens. But what if it doesn't? Can we all today agree to do something to tell someone that they're worth more? And for me, it was eye contact, the way someone made it with me or didn't. It was the way they talked with me versus someone talking about me. It was the way they showed me that I had talent, that I had skills, that I had potential that mattered. And I think all of us can do that in the faith community. And it doesn't cost us any more. So that's why tonight is different, because usually I go out and we're talking about programs and we're talking about policies and we're talking about procedures and we're talking about protocol. But tonight we're talking about something that is much, much deeper, and it matters far, far, far more than anything else I talk about. Can we create a place in society? Can we create a place where we accept people who have been victimized, and we don't blame them and we don't shame them? Where we don't blame them and we don't shame them and we don't do any more harm to them, but where we can tell them that they have worth and they have value. I think we could point to examples, if we had theologians in here, of many, many people before us who made that happen with far less resources than we have. And I think we can do it. I really believe in it. But it has to be that faith piece. So for me, being baptized in the church and coming into the church was about finding a home. And I want to know if we can offer that to others. I challenge us to think about how we can do that, how we can offer that, and how we could give validation to someone's spirit who someone else has tried to break or has told they're broken. My own life experiences, I don't tell many of the details or the stories anymore. For my own personal reasons, I don't have to go there. I wrote a book. There's a documentary. Yeah. So if you have specific questions about my own story, you may have seen some articles in the paper, some pieces of my story, and you put something together. I basically told my story so that the people who had been victimized could hear it. To me, you're important. It's important that people that are in the community hear it. But I really told my story so that those girls that were sitting in juvenile hall, who had been trafficked, who had been sold, who had been told they were nothing, so that they would feel connected. That's why I told my story. That's the only reason that I will tell my story today, is to connect with others that have been there before. That's the only time I really go out and share my story. As I was doing kind of my prayer, my work for today, I came across a prayer from St. Teresa's prayer. And I'm going to share a couple of prayers with you today, but this one is for the survivors that are out there right now. This one is for the survivors that are out there right now. And if anybody wants a copy of it or take a picture of it with your smartphone when you leave, then you can do that. Anybody who knows me knows I don't like paper, so I don't print out lots of copies for everybody. So I have the website too. This is St. Teresa's prayer. May today there be peace within. May you trust God that you are exactly where you are meant to be. May you not forget the infinite possibilities that are born of faith. May you use those gifts that you have received and pass on the love that has been given to you. May you be content knowing you are a child of God. Let this presence settle into your bones and allow your soul the freedom to sing, dance, praise, and love. It is there for each and every one of us. This last line, it is there for each and every one of us, also almost made me not read that prayer. Because I thought, haven't they been used enough? Haven't we been used enough? Haven't we belonged to enough people? But then I realized, you know what they're saying? You know what that prayer is saying? Is that we do this because we're all connected. That if we leave one behind, if we leave that person behind, if we don't let them know how special they are, then we disconnect everybody in our community, in our faith community. So when you're doing this work, I know some people, think, oh, I'm doing it for them, I'm giving to them. You're giving to a whole community. Because that person's going to go on and become a leader. That person's going to go on and share that love. That person is going to go on and dance and praise and give and change the world in ways that you don't even know. So as I think about survivors, I don't think weak victim, oh, poor child. I think strong survivor. Oh, what a blessing when I meet them and they could show me or teach me something. And that's how I felt when I came into this faith community. I didn't feel like there was a pity party waiting for me. I felt like there were people who saw my strengths, who wanted to highlight those and build upon them, and as much success or anything that I had, they wanted to help celebrate and be a part of. And so my second request for you after you do that something is to do it in a way that celebrates the person and their spirit. Oh, poor victim. No. Oh, strong woman. Strong man, strong survivor. How amazing that your strength is that brought you here today so you could share this with us, so that you could help bring together a movement, so that you could dance, so that you could pray, so that you can love. That's amazing. For all of us, because it belongs to all of us then. The opposite, if we do nothing, also belongs to all of us. The opposite, if we do nothing and this all crashes and burns and we let kids die on the street and continue just to fail them, that also belongs to us. So now I like that last line. Now I see. See, this is a study. This is going back. You reread it again. You reread it again. And yes, Terry knows how I was in RCIA. But I'm going to transition. I'm going to go to the panel now. And again, if you have questions along the way, you can write these down so you can hear about what's going on in our community from the members. As we go through the panel, I want to bring us all into awareness that the work that is being done is difficult. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes planning, it takes coordination. It's not easy. And guess what? There's a prayer for that too. Yes. So this one I shared with some of the panelists ahead of time so they could know where my heart is. And it's taken me a while to get here, but this prayer is for times of transition. God of love, you are with us in every transition and change. As we enter into this new era with excitement and even some anxiety, we recall your deep compassion, presence, and abounding love. We thank you for the gifts, talents, and skills with which you have blessed us. We thank you for the experiences that have brought us to this moment. We thank you for the work of others that gives breadth and depth to our own work. Be with us as we move forward, rejoicing with you and supporting one another. We ask this in your holy name. Amen. And I have a copy of that as well. And this is how we move forward. And this is a transition process. And this is one where you're an important part of it. So I'm gonna let Tracy start if you want to and are able.
Oh no, it's hard to tell you. Good evening. I'm Tracy Shiro, and I'm the Assistant Director of Social Services for all of San Luis Obispo County. So I work for you, I work for our community, and I'm a member of St. Patrick's in Arroyo Grande. And went through the RCIA process in 2009 and 2010. So I'm relatively new to that. I wanted to tell you a little bit about what I do and how it connects to the work that we're all doing. So in our agency, I oversee all of the programs that we administer. So it is all of child welfare services. It is what many of you refer to as child protective services. It is child welfare, all of the welfare of children. I also oversee adult protective services and in-home support services for adults. I also oversee all of our benefit programs. So all of the, like Medi-Cal, now Affordable Care Act, foster care, what we used to call food stamps, and is now called CalFresh, and I'll remember that one day. I'll get it. And CalWorks and the Welfare to Work program, which is the welfare program. And so the reason I want you to know that is because so many of the people in our lives are part of all of those programs or just one of those programs. So we have an opportunity at Social Services to be a resource for most everyone in our community in one way or another, and to really help connect people to those services and things that to which they're eligible for. So we really want to connect them all. And we have families who, have someone in their home that's getting services. They have someone in their home that becomes part of the human trafficking system. And so it touches all of our lives. And it gives us that opportunity to really help people in their homes and in the community. In child welfare, until recently, if we received a call, and we get hundreds of calls every day, if we received a call about someone being trafficked, our response in child welfare would have been, thank you so much for calling, and we're going to hand that over to law enforcement. And we would have immediately handed it over to law enforcement and really felt like that wasn't our role. And the reason we would have felt that way is because the law says that our job in child welfare, which is the same as Child Protective Services, is that our job is to protect children from abuse and neglect by their caregivers, by their parents, or who are acting as their parents. So historically, our job has been in the homes of children. And human trafficking often doesn't happen in their home. Sometimes it does, but often it does not. And when we've done a recent study and a look back, we found that a very high percentage of those that we interviewed who have been part of the human trafficking victimization and are now survivors and have been talking with us, or even those who are still not survivors yet, we find that many of them were in foster care. A very high percentage. Anyone want to guess? And my staff, some of my staff cannot guess, but in this room they know the answer.
75?
Very close. 85%. 85%. So that means we haven't done a very good job. And that means we have to do a better job. It means we have to do a much better job. We have to do a better job of getting children that are into our system and cannot be at home with their families into good, safe homes. That we get them permanency and well-being as fast as we possibly can. And that if we can get them back home, great. But if we can't, we have to do a better job. We can't let kids run away from our system and end up as victims in this other system. We can't let that happen. And so now the legislation has changed, and now those children are ours. So if we get a call, if someone calls us and says, I'm pretty sure that that little girl down on the corner is being prostituted, that we can get right out there and we can take them into our care. That's a huge change. It gives us the authority to get involved and help those children. And we're doing that. We're doing that in San Luis Obispo. It's a big change for child welfare. It's a big change that not every county is really thrilled about. Not because they don't think it's the right thing to do, but because it's a scary thing to do. It's one thing to be dealing with parents and a family network. It's another to be dealing with pimps and with gangs and with situations that we aren't totally ready for. And so when my peers across the state of California say, because San Luis Obispo is leading the way in helping other counties get on board with this and developing protocols. And when other counties say to me, Tracy, it's too scary, I say, it's too scary not to. It's too scary not to get involved. And we've got too many people in our community and across the state and across the country that want to get involved and help us do this work. So we have no excuse, and we're trying to lead the way. I also sit on the state action team. It's called the CSEC State Action Team for the state of California. And we meet regularly. We're working very hard to put together standardized protocols, because we are government. So Carissa said, we're not talking about that, but that's my world. That's what we do. Got to have a roadmap. And so, but we are working at a statewide level to put together agreed upon protocols and services and how to get those services, how to pay for those services, so that every county in the state of California can put those protocols and services in place. And we're working on that, and I think we're making good strides. But at the same time that that's happening, we have children being abused today. We have children being trafficked today. And we have children in our county that this is happening to. So along the way, our county has been working with a community effort. There are many people I saw in this room that are on our action team, our local action team, and we've already developed the protocols, the screenings, the questions to ask young people, the ways to find out. Survivors have helped us develop those tools so that we're asking the right questions, trying to find out. and making it so that community members can do that as well and give us a call so that we can get involved with these children and young adults and work with them. We can serve children and young adults up through the age of 21, and we're working with our Domestic Violence Task Force to develop those services for the over 21, so that we can really work together in this community to put an end to this. The other thing I wanted to share with you is that we couldn't do it without the efforts in this room and the efforts in this community. So our local action team is made up of many of the people you see at this table, many other communities. It is all of the government agencies. It is social services, our probation department, we have law enforcement, we have drug and alcohol services and mental health services, because we're all coming into contact with people at different areas and different places. We're working with our homeless shelters and providing with those services as well. So I think that we're very fortunate, very blessed to be in this county where we have these resources, and we have a county that makes it a priority. And so I'm going to hand this over. Are we just going down the line? Okay, and I'll hand this over to John Nibio from Family Care Network. And I do just want to share that what I really appreciate about Family Care Network is that they work very closely with us to say yes. How do we say yes to the children and families we serve?
Thank you. So I first off want to thank everybody for allowing me to be here. And just a little bit to fit in with Carissa's theme, why do I do what I do, and maybe what as the community can get involved in and do to help. I always think back on that when I have to do a presentation, and I start with this. I'm one of 7 children. My mom was a single parent, Irish Catholic, west side of Chicago. And we had our challenges. And she raised us with those golden rules. Went to Catholic school, 1st through 8th grade. And I was really happy to sit next to Sister Gloria.
I'm happy to sit next to you.
First, I'd like to see if you had a ruler. But
If you didn't say that, I was going to tell on
in my life.
But, you know, I think it's those values and those people that helped us along the way is why I do what I do. What I can do to make a difference, because it is bigger than all of us. It's bigger than government, it's bigger than everything. So we really kind of have to practice that serenity prayer in this transition in this difficult time. So what is it that we can do? You know, what's the wisdom in it, and what can't we do, and how do we work together? So I kind of say that to myself on a daily basis. Career-wise, it's interesting, my career has gone, what I say, anywhere from preschool to prisons. I started out, you know, working in Head Start programs. I've worked for child welfare services. I've worked in the mental health system. And then as our system changed, and some of those services went away from our really acute populations, I ended up in the probation department, and it wasn't by accident, because those kids that I used to be working with in a hospital setting some 25 years ago were now in the juvenile hall, and that's where I met Jim Braybeck many years ago. And he's a great example of what somebody can do in a community to help out. Then after that period of time, I said, okay, what can I do next to really make a difference? And Family Care Network was a small agency, started some 27 years ago, started with just recruiting foster homes through the faith-based community, and has grown over the years, and today we're here in San Luis County and in Santa Barbara County. And we grew as our community grew, and some of the changes in programs have actually been for the good. We do have gaps in our system, but I feel very fortunate and blessed to live and work in San Luis Obispo County. I would say that a variety of services that we provide in partnership with the community have really made a difference. And so when we look at this population that we're talking about trying to help, these young women and young men that fall into this, it really takes an entire community approach to it. So fast forward, we'll go back 15 years ago, 17 years ago. In our county in San Luis Obispo, we had about 140 kids placed away out of county in institutional care. And we weren't doing a good job, and those outcomes showed us that. Many of the kids system-wide ended up homeless or incarcerated. So finally, somebody said at the legislation, let's do something different. So it started this one program. I'll spare you a whole lot of details. But what it did is I think some people that cared about money at the state level and some people cared about doing the right thing. And if you can ever get those two people in the same room, you usually can get a better result. So the legislation started this thing called wraparound, which was SB 163, which essentially allowed you to take these funds that would normally go for a child to go in a group home, that same target population, and you could flexibly use those resources to help them stay in a family home or maybe with a relative and a caregiver, which we didn't look to in the past. We put kids away and we never explored aunts, uncles, grandparents. Fast forward today, we have less than 40 kids placed in out-of-county group home, and many kids placed with family, relatives, kin, grandparents. And we are doing much better there. The other part of it is that you build this continuum around this child and this family. So how it relates to our issue tonight, part of our local solution is, what do we do with a teen who comes in the middle of the night, social services gets involved, the task force gets involved, where are we going to put them? So we have some very special foster parents that work for us, and we need more of them. So our idea is then to take a couple of those few special foster parents, have this team that then can have extra training and support and understanding, but then wrap around this young person and try to help them in the multiple ways that they need. It's counseling, it's forming a relationship. Like you, Carissa, it's saying the positive things, and it's a process. Because they might not be interested right away, but we still need to build that relationship and build that bridge and build a comprehensive plan. So that can mean counseling, it can mean in-home support services. We can also draw on some funds through our TAFAP assistance program, which is to help kids go to community college, go on to four-year college, go to vocational school, to give them those other opportunities. The percentage of foster care children that go to college is less than, they graduate from college is less than 3%. And so we really need to do something about that, so that you really can make a long-lasting difference. And so when I love meeting Carissa, when you hear her story and you look at where she's at now, it's all of those things. And it was that spirit and that drive. And I've known many of these kids through the years, and they do have that spirit. And sometimes at points it's angry and it's oppositional, but I'd always rather work with a kid who's angry and fired up versus one that's kind of curled up in a ball in a corner. Those are the really scary situations. So anyways, we want to build that team. So what can we all do as a community? There's something for everybody. One, being here tonight, increasing your awareness. Two, if you know somebody that's in the phase of their life where they could become a foster parent and would like to be a foster parent, let us know. If that doesn't fit, we need mentors, we need tutors, we need volunteers to wrap around these children. A lot of them are in the foster care system that are at risk for this. So the more we can do earlier in the foster care system to help them with all of these different things is going to help divert them. So there's a lot we can do on the prevention end. So I really do believe there is something that somebody can do at any point here to help further this cause. So, you know, again, I just want to thank you for being here, and think of ways that you could get involved. It could be respite, it could be being a foster parent, mentors, tutors. They make the difference, the world of difference for these kids, and will help them in the long term. So, thank you very much.
Can I just introduce our next our panelists that came in? Erin, you will go next, but
go ahead.
Erin just came in. She's from Restorative Partners because Sister T is out doing her amazing work and has a team of people. So she, Sister Gloria, you can present, and then, and we'll give Erin a head start to catch up about whoever's on the panel, so she can breathe for a moment too. And just so you know, we'll be having that time for the networking afterwards. So if you have more questions, or if there are questions on other sites about Family Care Network and how to become a mentor, and what is respite, and what are all those things that you might become involved in, then we're going to stick around and help you answer those questions too.
I'm a little nervous to be with all these experts. I really mean that. I think I'd first start, I didn't have a formal talk, but I would just say I am the daughter of Mexican immigrants. My parents came here as farm workers and worked in canneries, very close to here. And for me, I think so much is about the family. Single parent, double parent, extended, whatever. In our work as church, I think I would really underline what Carissa was saying. I am so, as I get older, convinced we must draw more and more from the depths of our Christian faith, because it's bigger than us. My family taught me that when they came and had nothing, but they taught us values, one of which was faith, one of which was get your education and don't be crying about it. That's what I liked about your book. And I say that as an educator for many, many years. I have been teaching, the last round was at Berkeley at the Graduate Theological Union. So whether they're 5 or 35, I think we have to kick butt sometimes with kids that have the potential. But they're so smart that they act like they don't. Excuse me, guns don't usually say kick butt. I know. That must mean I'm really feeling comfortable. But drawing from our Christian faith, I think I will say, as a Catholic, I can complain about many things about my church. I hope Bishop Richard is watching right now. I might not have a job. But you know what? When all is said and done, this is our spiritual home. You can't walk away from it. But what's there is life. And I really believe, I had the beautiful opportunity actually this summer to make a 30-day retreat. I know that sounds kind of bizarre, but it was wonderful in Spain. But one of the things that touched me and really made me realize again, you know, those great mystics, they knew that life and prayer go together. Teresa of Avila would say, Christ has no hands but yours, no feet but yours, no heart but yours. I mean, what does that tell us today? And Ignatius says, contemplation and action. And so the great work that we do that is so important, to be with the poor, to be with those kids, to work with them, what you're all doing. But I think that when we do it as men and women in prayer, whatever your faith background is, I think I remember when I was in college somewhere, Carl Jung said something about he had never taken care of anyone with mental illness who didn't have the real problem that they had no spirituality. You know, I think this is huge, and I really believe our kids are starving for spirituality, wholesome. I'm not talking about spiritualizing, blah, 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 pray over it. And I really mean the hard work that we have to do, but know that God is with us. And this is the work of the Creator. And she wants us to do this. Sorry. I'm probably getting personally too long. But I just wanted to underline that.
Cousin's on the phone.
So can I go to your agency and I don't have a job tomorrow? No, I will tell you this. In the structure of the Diocese of Monterey, it is huge, as you know. We're talking about Santa Cruz County, Monterey County, San Benito County, and San Luis Obispo County. So geography is huge. We have a lot of work to do, but I will say this, you have a bishop who wants this to happen, that he wants us to be here, and all of the other groups that are meeting tonight. This is a big priority for the leader of our diocese because he is so pastoral. So we have a lot of work to do, and I think one of the little pieces for me, just to let you know, the Women Religious of Northern California have a coalition of almost all religious women's groups that are working on human trafficking. It may be why we're in trouble with the Vatican. But there are big Catholic groups working now. In San Jose, there's a South Bay Coalition. Now these are coalitions of faith-based and county and so on. I think we have to keep doing it that way. Our church, we're too small. We need these kinds of coalitions. So in our work, I think we're on the right path. And I think that in our diocese, actually, what we want to do is form a team to help spur us all on. So things are happening, seeds are being planted, okay? So we pray for one another, pray for me as I'm starting out and you're teaching me the way. And she has taught me the way in that book. It was really quite a spiritual journey for me to read it. Really. Okay, that's all I have to say.
My name is Greg Devitt. I am a prosecutor in this county, and it's nice to follow the sister because it sort of reminds me of something my grandmother always said. And it was, if you want to have a good time at a party, invite a couple of nuns. So I appreciate the sister's comment.
This is true. Now that you said that, if you can't celebrate life, you can't celebrate liturgy.
I'm one of 3 prosecutors in the county that prosecute sex crimes. A very brief background about myself. I was born and raised in San Luis Obispo, went to San Luis Obispo High School, went to college and law school in San Francisco. After graduate, I was lucky enough to intern in Washington, D.C. for then Congressman Leon Panetta. When I was in undergrad, I saw the tremendous importance of the law while working for Congressman Panetta. It's the first thing I wanted to do after that internship. I'm a 4th generation attorney, so before that, that was the last thing I wanted to do. But I really saw the importance of law and really the importance of prosecution. Went to law school with the idea of becoming a prosecutor, graduated law school, found a job in Middlesex County, Massachusetts, was an assistant district attorney there for a little over a year, was able to come back to California, was a prosecutor in San Mateo County for 7.5 years, 3.5 of which I prosecuted only sexual assault cases, rapes and molestations, and that was it. Lucky enough to come back home, have been a deputy district attorney. It'll be 7 years tomorrow that I've been in the office, and the last several prosecuting sex crimes. I think just to talk briefly about the human trafficking law, and I'll keep it brief. The federal law passed in 2000. California passed their law in the legislative session 2005-2006, amended briefly, or a very minor part in 2009-2010, and then there was just this tremendous explosion in 2012, where a ballot initiative was passed. Over 81% of the voters voted to change the law. And when I say explosion, I mean the punishment is astronomical, or can be. So the trick is, drawing on what Carissa had said this evening, is having somebody understand a situation wherein a young man or a young woman is involved in the prostitution field. And the first thing that's going to be argued by anybody who's defending a perpetrator is he or she, the victim, is committing a crime. And that's what it is. That's the eyes of the viewer. They are committing a crime. And my job is to try to get 12 people to all see the same thing the same way. And today, and we live in a beautiful community, the rhetorical question is, what was the weather like today? Some of you may say it's beautiful. Some of you say, well, it was a little overcast, it was a little windy. I gotta get 12 people on the same page, thinking the same thing at the same time, working together. And that's the issue of the open-mindedness. And working in an urban community up in the Bay Area, there has what I call the herd mentality. I don't mean it that they are sheep just following orders. I mean, there are people from all over that county that have absolutely no connection to the victim. They don't know her, they don't see her, they may have read about cases, but there is a protection by a larger community to somebody they've never met. And we have almost the reverse in this community, wherein people speculate, well, he or she may have put themselves in a situation that he or she brought on themselves. And it's almost, you have the reverse. The less of a caretaking than you would in a larger environment. Why that exists, I certainly have my ideas, but that's something I've experienced firsthand with some of the cases that I've tried and regrettably, some of the verdicts that I've achieved. People often ask me, well, what's the best juror that you can have? And I'm not saying it because the sister's on the panel, it's a nun. Nuns are smart. They are extremely patient. They listen and they don't judge people, they judge facts. And that's the direction I think that we need to head in. And I cannot change somebody's behavior. All I can do is try to hold them accountable. But it's the community that sets the tone in how we are able to go forward and prosecute these types of cases and hold perpetrators accountable for what they have done. And you all here are showing an open-mindedness because you want to learn more, but it's your friends, it's your neighbors, regardless of political affiliation, regardless of socioeconomic background, regardless of religion or race. It is judging a set of facts, not judging an individual, and keeping an open mind, because the argument in these types of cases, from the defense perspective, is he or she holds the keys to leave. They are not tied, they are not bound, they are not kept against their will. And I have to convince the reverse, wherein he or she did not feel they could leave. He or she did not feel they could challenge the perpetrator. He or she did not feel that they could stand up on their own. And there are tremendous, tremendous similarities between victims of sexual assault and these types of crimes and victims of domestic violence.
Oh, yeah.
And we are certainly seeing that recently in, if you've seen anything about the NFL lately, and I don't mean to disparage the NFL, I mean that it illustrates the point that victims of domestic violence and victims of these types of crimes have a tremendous similarity wherein they do not feel they can leave. And it's the job of the prosecutor, it's the job of the police, it's the job of social services, it's the job of the community to hold an individual accountable while at the same time protecting the victim. And I think the best way that that can be done is with education. So I appreciate you being here tonight, and I appreciate your open-mindedness and a willingness to learn more. And I hope you take the next step by getting involved in your community and doing something as little as talking to your friends and neighbors about what you learned tonight, because I think that can grow an open-mindedness, which, and I will say this selfishly, that makes my job a lot easier. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erin McNulty, and I work with Restorative Partners. We're a nonprofit that offers several different programs inside our county juvenile hall and county jail. I started out focusing a lot on our juvenile hall programs a couple of years back, and now I've moved over to focusing a little bit more on our jail programs, and we have, luckily, staff and volunteers to help us with all the above. When people ask me personally what we do in our programs, I would say we address the needs of the individuals, and everyone has the need to heal. Whether it be healing from the crime that they have committed or maybe the trauma that they have had in themselves. About 95% of offenders were victims themselves at one point before actually becoming offenders, and that's really important to address. Restorative Partners comes from a restorative justice model where all the stakeholders are involved with the healing. It is the victim and offender and community members involved to heal this individual. And unfortunately, we have had the experience of having young girls in juvenile hall that have been human trafficked. And how do we address that? Luckily, we've had experienced volunteers with spiritual direction. I know Carissa herself has been called in, asked to mentor. We have mentors that maybe have not gone through the personal experience but have the training and background to help. And those are the resources that we really like to call upon. Not only do they need a mentor, but they really need counseling. They need someone to address the trauma at hand and let that victim know that they don't have to be a victim their whole life. And that is something that's extremely important. And we may offer that in our book club at Juvenile Hall, something that you wouldn't even think would be connected, but we're reading a book that addresses it. We read Runaway Girl in Juvenile Hall, and a lot of feelings come up towards that. And how does it become addressed? It's creating a safe environment and knowing the resources to call upon. And we are very lucky to have that. We've had other instances where intervention and prevention always come into play. And with intervention, we call upon 5 people to help this one person. It's never just a one-on-one. And in our mentors, we have mentor support. I'm getting called by my mentee. I call other mentors for advice because I don't have all the answers. And that goes with everyone in our agency. Also, we try to address the trauma in a constructive way. Tonight, I'm late because I was in a program in the jail. We're offering nonviolent communication, and we talked a lot about the unmet needs and how that creates a lot of anger, which disconnects from the community and isolates yourself, and it creates, again, that disconnect where you don't feel that you're worth it to change. And we really come in with a compassionate heart to realize that everyone can change and no one is worth not being told that they're worth it. So that's just a little bit about our programs. We have a table in the back of the several different programs that we offer and the ways that you can get involved. I would say the biggest need is not only community awareness, all of you being here and telling your friends and family, but having adequate training for that. How do we detect human trafficking? How do we detect sexual assault? And how can we partner with these people? And asking our community to train us, putting on a training our volunteers. We have up to 175 volunteers now coming into jail and juvenile hall, whether it be facilitating or just coming in and being with the youth. And so there's several different ways to get involved, and always being able to ask our policymakers and our community to train us, become knowledgeable, get certified so we can help prevent this from continuing. Thank you.
I'm Commander Brenda Trobaugh, and it's an honor to be here with such an elite group and people who really take this as a passion. As Carissa said, I started working with victims of human trafficking before they were even considered a victim, before the laws federally or in the state changed. And it was a challenge. It's like going back to the Stone Age when I sit up here now and listen to all the resources that are available. Gang rape has been around for years, but people wanted to ignore it and wanted to keep it in the closet. And eventually it came to a head. I think it was fortunate and unfortunate that I was there when it all came to a head.
it taught me a whole new beginning. And we have to remember that in order to have progress, we must have change. And that means change with law enforcement, the way we view our victims, the way we handle our suspects, the way the community looks at who we are dealing with. Human trafficking is over, $32 billion a year industry. It's only second to drug trafficking. That's how big of a problem we have in the United States and in the world. And it's not isolated into one little island. It's all over the place. It's in your backyard and you don't even realize it quite frequently because you don't know how to recognize those signs and symptoms. Gangs are getting very, very violent. I've been in law enforcement for a very long time. I worked in the Central Valley for over 21 years. 14 of those years was working with gangs. I've seen every kind of crime. I've worked every crime from a petty theft to homicides. But the hardest crimes for me to work were those of sex crimes, including very large gang rapes. And to have a victim just melt in your hand because of what they had and have nothing to give them. It's heartbreaking. It plays on your own heartstrings in order to do that. And we figured out early on that the only way we were going to be able to help those victims is if we had a partner. Because we couldn't help them by ourselves in law enforcement. We had to keep our victim in a state of mind so that the prosecutor could actually try the case, so that we wouldn't have future victims. And it's definitely a very big, big challenge. And we couldn't have done it without the faith-based groups. Because picture this, you have a sexual assault. You can imagine the trauma of a female that's raped. Okay, now multiply that by 5. How about by 10? How about by 100? I've interviewed young girls who can articulate 100 different times they were sexually assaulted. And at least another 100 or 150 times where they can remember part of it, but not all of it. How do you help somebody like that? There's physical, there's mental, and there's emotional scars. It takes a joint effort. The old saying, it takes a village to raise a child, it's no different here. In order to help our victim, we must partner and we must work together. And when you have the gangs that are involved in it, because they're involved in more of the, what they call low risk and high profit, well, think about it. Sexual assault, human trafficking, that's a high gain. They can make $1,000 to $3,000 a day off of one young lady. In 2011, down in San Diego, 38 Crips were arrested, and they were averaging anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 a day off of one young girl. Does that tell you what kind of trauma she suffered? It deteriorates our community when we allow things like that to happen. The gangs make it a challenge as well, and they're more involved in the human trafficking is because it's not a pimp that you can remove off the street, and now we can just take this victim here and put him over here, and everything's going to be okay. Because that gang has a lot of tentacles. And if one person gets locked up, you still have these other 3 that are going to try to get that property back, because that's exactly what it is. It's property. Whether they ink them or not, that's their property, that's the way they view it, that's money in their pocket, that's how they support their party, that's how they fix their cars, that's how they run their gang. So you have to look as a community, how can we protect these victims when it's not just one perpetrator? It's many. And today's society has to look at it through those glasses. As a community, how do we fix the problem? We can't be tolerant of it. We have to support our prosecutors. And me, I'm on a different page in a different chapter than most of these people up here because I'm on the front line. I'm coming face to face with the perpetrators as well as with the victims. And sometimes it's my actions that make or break the victim. Because if they don't think they can trust me, why are they going to talk to me? Respect gets respect. If I give that victim no respect, why is that victim going to talk to me? I train law enforcement in realizing the impact of human trafficking now. And it's not just a problem in California, it's not just a problem in San Luis Obispo, but it's nationwide. And these young girls are taken all over the U.S. And we want to make them healthy and we want to make them whole. And the only way we can do that is if we work together. When you look at the average age of our young girls who are brought in, they're so gullible, and before they know it, they're trapped. And as Greg said, it's like domestic violence. They don't know how to get out because, let's face it, they break them down. Whether it's gang raping them by 5 or 10 guys to break them down that way, getting them addicted to drugs, or the violence where they beat them into submission. There is so much comparison between the domestic violence and the sex trade, it's unreal. And we really need to start looking at providing those same types of resources in a community and in an atmosphere where we can heal the person inside and out. And it's the partnerships of those various groups that are going to make the difference, that are going to save that youth, who are going to save that young lady, who get them back on the right track. But just remember this, it doesn't happen overnight. And so don't expect to be a victim today and a totally different person tomorrow. It's like you're going down the freeway at 50 miles an hour. What happens if you throw that car into reverse? What happens to it? We have a mess, right? Well, we have to allow them time to go into a neutral. And everybody gets to that point at a different time. It's not a cookie cutter approach. It's not a magic pill. It's a lot of hard work. But we have to be able to get that person, build their confidence, build their trust in order to get them into a neutral position before we can ever start giving them the strength to heal. And I'm really excited to see as many people here that are willing to make that change so that we can have the progress we need to address all those victims that we have out there in the community. Thank you.
Well, hi. Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you guys all for being here tonight. This is an honor to be a part of. My name is Rebecca Turner. The co-founder of the Mountain Brook Abolitionists. I just wanted to share a little bit about our history. A few years ago, I didn't even know that human trafficking existed. I was interning with Pastor Bobby at Mountain Brook Community Church, and as part of my internship, he sent me up to Portland to a conference. And in 48 hours, my world was turned upside down. I learned that trafficking still happened overseas, and I learned that it still happened in the U.S. And there's an estimated 100 to 300,000 children being trafficked within the U.S. And then I learned that the average age of entry into what we call prostitution is 12 to 14, and that didn't make sense to me at all. And then I learned, so I started doing research, and then I came home, and I was like, okay, I need to find out more about this. And I came upon this thing called slaveryfootprint.org. If you guys, you could write it down. If you really want to feel good about yourself, go home and take the quiz. I learned that I had about, not only did slavery still exist, there's 27 million slaves around the world today, but that I was directly connected to it. I took the quiz, and according to what I was wearing, the coffee I was drinking, the chocolate I was eating, the phone I was using, that I had about 34 slaves somewhere in the world contributing to my lifestyle. And that wasn't okay with me. And so I tell you that because I think the biggest thing that's helped me in this work, volunteerism, is having grace for myself, from God for others. I think that's where the spirituality is really necessary, is to continue to make baby steps. So I came back from that conference and asked if we could have a guest speaker share about human trafficking, and Pastor Bobby said yes. You know, this is your community, you can get involved. And so I would encourage everybody here to look to your community. And we had a guest speaker, and this work has also restored my faith in the faith community itself, because people there responded. They said yes. And so there was about 40 people, I think, that signed up on a sign-up sheet. And so we started meeting, and we decided, we're like, okay, now what? We're all in this room together. Now what are we going to do? And so we decided, one girl, she was so sweet, she's like, okay, so it's in my products, it's everywhere, do I just make all my clothes from scratch? Like, what do I do? And so we decided to have grace with each other and continue to learn together and do it together as a group. So we decided, okay, we can do awareness. We can ring the bell. We can let's tell as many people as possible that this is happening, and hopefully we'll catalyze a local movement against labor and sex trafficking. And so we held a few different awareness events. We did a documentary screening. We did a little, very little, stand for freedom in front of the courthouse here in SLO. I think there was about 30 of us at the high point. We stood for 27 hours to represent the 27 million and collected signatures for international justice mission. And I think at the low point there were 3 of us, but we stayed. So we did that, and then we started getting emails and contacts. People started asking questions as we raised awareness. So okay, now we gotta educate ourselves. Okay, education is next. So we decided to host a conference. We hosted the Justice Summit last November, and Chris had consulted for that and helped make it a big success. And so that was a huge encouragement to see our community say yes and respond, to see social services and to see the DA's office. Everybody said yes, what can we do? And so that's kind of where we're at now, is we want to continue to raise awareness and facilitate education. We'll be having another Justice Summit hosting international and national experts on human trafficking, January 16th and 17th at Mountain Brook Community Church. You're all invited. One other thing that we do is we want to be able to serve survivors in practical ways. So at the last Justice Summit, we collected, anybody that was interested signed up, and so we started a network basically of people that could volunteer or donate. So we've had a few requests, and we try to meet those as quickly as possible. It's very grassroots, but if a survivor says she's really interested in artwork, so we can be like, okay, who can, someone might have a full-time job, they might not be fully trained in how to be a mentor, but they can go to the store and buy some art supplies and drop it off at the DA's office. So we try to network like that. I do have a sign-up sheet if anybody's interested in joining that network. And we want to continue to catalyze a local movement. So we have, I brought a couple hundred flyers with our documentary screenings on there. So tomorrow night we have a film on child labor trafficking in the chocolate industry. And then we have one in November, human trafficking on a global scale. In December, we have one on labor trafficking in the coffee industry. And I hope that at each of those evenings that a local leader will stand up and say, I want to take this on. What is our next step? Let's challenge our local businesses, and let's celebrate the ones that are already providing slave-free and fair trade products. So a little shout out to Mama Ganache. They do slave-free chocolate, and they'll be presented there tomorrow night. And then another thing that we want to do is we have and are more than willing to go to any small group that you may have and present practical ways that the average citizen can get involved. I know for me, I was heartbroken when I found out about this, and I thought there was no way that I could do anything. And it's just wrong. Each of us can do something. So a few ways, if you're a teacher or a leader of a group, you can host a presentation on human trafficking. Education is really important. You can host a documentary screening. You can go online and take that quiz. Most important, I wouldn't have done my job tonight if I didn't encourage everybody to save the human trafficking hotline number. So if everybody could pull out their phones right now, that'd be great. Okay, so the hotline number is, how many people in this room have it already on their phone? Awesome, yay. Okay, so the hotline number is 1-888-3737-888. And that's the National Resource Center. I'll say it one more time, sorry. 1-888-3737-888. So you can call there if you see any suspicious activity, or if you want to know what local resources exist, you can call them, and that would be the first thing. I also have a list of possible human trafficking indicators and a list of people to call. We have the, obviously law enforcement, and then 781 KIDS phone number if you suspect anything, so that CPS can get involved. So other than that, just thank you all for being here. I think that's about it. You can go to our website, theabolitionist.org. There's a plethora of resources on there, free webinars and other educational materials. It'd be great if you could use it. Yeah, thank you all for being here.
So, did some of you have questions that you wrote down along the way and wanted to ask and get us? Okay. Or the panelists? Yes? Yes? Yes.
So there are other sites.
And there are other sites that will have questions? Okay. Definitely. Okay. And you will help me manage that somehow? Okay. So this was an amazing panel, and I have to say again, I think you're seeing all the pieces that we need, but then you also need to hold up a mirror because we need you as well. Everyone here stated that. We can't do this alone, that you're part of this effort in this community, and for those other sites as well. We cover a large geography, so we have to have partners everywhere, literally, and especially if something's happening at 2 in the morning at a site, and we have people trained there already that have the trauma-based therapy or care, or a trained foster family or parent, trained law enforcement, and prosecutors that are ready to go, like Greg. So that's awesome. Rebecca is the person that I call, so I would highly encourage everyone that can. I'll just start sending this around. Is that okay? Yeah. To sign up on this list, because that's how I would also get a hold of you if I wanted to have anybody that was interested in providing any services or getting involved or getting on the network. So that clipboard will be going around if you're interested in signing up, and then we'll have it in the back as well during networking with Rebecca. And then the flyers will also be available for the movie, and we have questions, and then we might have questions at the other sites, so you'll help me manage that? Okay. So Senate Bill 1163, is that what it is? 11. Which one are we talking about? 1165? Is that the education one? Is that the one we're talking about? Okay. 1165, was that the one, the education bill that we're talking about? Or was it the one that we have to do the postings that are around? Is that 1193 or something like that? All the numbers? The education bill. The education bill. So that just was signed by the governor? Yes. That was just signed. So the education bill 1165 was just signed by the governor. So now, youth, children, are going to learn about how to protect themselves from predators and traffickers. How awesome is that? So we know that people wanted to put that in the education system, but they have many priorities, and now it became a top priority because now it is law in California. We are going to be doing that. And that, by and large, when I talk to people who have been victimized, is why didn't anybody tell me that that's what a trafficker looks like, or that's how they come, and that's how they approach me, is that they're going to solve all my problems. So we're very happy about that, 1165. How big of a problem is human trafficking in SLO County, and is it growing? Does anybody want to take a stab at that?
Sure.
I have an answer for numbers, but
Yes, you should. You both should follow up then. I guess I always answer that with we don't really know. I think that it's a much bigger issue than we were aware. Even I was aware of a year ago. I was like, it happens. I know it happens. You know, we have major hubs in Los Angeles and San Francisco and Vegas, so I know that women and children are being sold and coming through. And I've seen it online. And so I know that it is happening. And I think that part of the CSEC Response Collaborative is doing some data collection, so that'll help us know how often it is happening. But I don't think we'll know until we really educate our community on how to identify it, how to report it, and then we get those numbers coming in.
so I've thought about this a lot because people ask me, because I had that math degree and stuff, so what are the numbers? What are the numbers? Tell me how many? And I would like to know. But the reason we don't know is because we never cared to ask. We've spent a long time, and like Tracy said, we found out looking back that 85% of youth that had come in contact with the system had been in the system. So they were system youth. Who are the parents in that case? We are. We are the parents in that case, okay? So we're just finding that out. That's an important number. I know some other numbers that 85% of people that have been victimized in one study don't consider themselves a victim, yet they suffer from PTSD, nightmares, tremors, fantasized thoughts about harming the people who purchase them. So they are harmed. When someone acts violently against you, you want to act violently back. So I know those numbers. But as far as the number of people, this is like asking how many people are in a domestic violence relationship before we started caring and before we started counting. But also what had to happen with that issue, and just the same thing is happening with mental health, and is we have to erase the stigma. Yeah. That whole campaign needs to happen for human trafficking, both labor trafficking and sex trafficking. Erase the stigma so that people can come forward about their history and about their past without feeling judged. I have women come up to me very quietly, say, I'm a survivor too. Good job, good work that you're doing, right? And they don't feel like they can say it because they feel still like there's so much judgment out here. Yeah. And so when we erase that stigma, when we start counting the numbers that are happening now and caring about that, and then we erase the stigma, we'll be able to look back more at people that are able to come forward and say what actually happened. What actually happened. So I think, is it growing? And this is, have you listened to music lately? And I work with Rachel Thomas, who will be coming into the community here. She's from Southern California, but I know she works with Runaway Girl, and she does a media training. All parents need to be there. All grandparents need to be there. All aunties and uncles. Because you know what I hear? I hear parents say they picked it up in auntie's car, right? So you may not know what you're playing, but you're having a big impact because your auntie or uncle or whatever. And so you need to know what those words mean. And Rachel does a very good job. And I'm just going to share something very explicit about something that happened for someone in our training recently. She was a teacher at a school, and she said she had gone to one of our trainings and she was coming back for another one. And she said she had her 16-year-old younger cousin with her in the car. And she noticed she pulled out an iPhone. And her 16-year-old cousin's family and her don't have the money for an iPhone. So she asked her, how did you get that iPhone? And she said, well, I have this guy, that bought it for me. And then she asked her, because she took our training, and she asked her some difficult questions. And her younger cousin said back to her, no, cuz you don't have to worry about it, I'm just drinking that watermelon. So, Beyonce sings a song about that, and that is referring to a sexual act. And had the older cousin not known that, she wouldn't have known to call the human trafficking hotline, to turn this person in as a predator, to get them prosecuted so that this information could be shared. You have to know what's out there and be aware of what's in that music. You have to be aware to understand what a problem it is today and how it's growing. And it permeates everywhere in our culture. So this idea that we can have sexual acts and favors for something in return, we don't want that normalized. That's not giving value to what we're here and what we're about today with the Spirit. So anybody else want to add to, is it growing? That's my...
And you'll never know because it's not reported.
It's not reported.
So you'll never know the total number.
Exactly. We won't know because of that total number not being reported. Because of this, again, shame, stigma, are we looking, all of those things. Tracy, this question is for you. So I'll hand this over after I ask. Are the Justice Department tools helpful? And how can we get away from punishing?
It's more than one question.
Okay, it's more than one question. So are the Justice Department tools helpful? So are the
There's a
prosecution?
website on the Justice Department with a whole bunch of tools. Were those helpful?
Yes. Yes, they are helpful, and we're incorporating them into our daily practice. So, we're utilizing them locally. I don't know, at the state level, there's a lot of tools, and we're looking at an awful lot of tools to determine what we can standardize. But yes, they are very helpful. And there was another question?
I think, is this question directed for someone else?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. One thing I want to share is that I think it's very, very important with numbers that it's very exciting actually that we now get to teach children in school what this is about. I think it's very, very important. You know, sex education wasn't usually taught in school. I'm old, I'm showing my age now. But it wasn't taught in school. So you didn't know what not to have if you didn't know what it was. You know, and I remember my daughter, she'll kill me for this story. But when she was in junior high, I said, we need to sit down and have a talk. And she said, Mom, if anyone asks me if I want to have sex, I'm going to tell them no. I said, that'd be great if they asked. I said, but it doesn't really happen that way. And that's what happens with our children, with our youth, with our young women and young men, is they don't realize it. They're getting pulled in. They're getting coaxed. They're getting, many of our young girls think it's their boyfriend. I think it's their boyfriend. They tell us it's their boyfriend. And so, and many of them, it's a family business. And so they've been brought into this family. And so I think it's really important, and it's wonderful that we're going to get to teach children in school. And where you come in is when your neighbors say, oh my gosh, I'm not going to sign that form. I'm going to tell them they can't be in that classroom to learn that. Because it still happens with sex education today too. Parents have the right to say no to their children. They can't be in the classroom for that. And this is vitally important to protect our children. Vitally important. So I just, while I have this microphone, I wanted to share that if your neighbors are talking about it, share this with them, why it's so important. They need to know what it is so they know not to walk down that path.
Thank you. And then the next question, I really like it because I think I have an answer for it. So how can we get away from punishing and then I'm going to put quotes around it, prostitute and prosecute the, quote, Johns. The first thing is to change the labels. Prostitution is a crime, as was stated. Prostitution is a crime. So if we call someone a prostitute, we are calling them a criminal automatically out of the box. John, what's John? It's a guy. That's a human. That's your brother. Right? That's somebody that is humanized. So we have, as a system, set it up to humanize the buyer, the predator. We don't call them Johns, buyers, predators. And to dehumanize the victim, the person that's likely being victimized and sold. It's a perfect setup for a trafficker to profit off of. Because we give the human. So the first thing is changing those labels. That's the very first step. That's how we'll start prosecuting the buyers. There's some debate about whether or not obtain means obtain in the human trafficking law. Obtain means obtain, in my view. And if I was on a jury or anywhere else or analyzing this as any part of the legal process, if you buy, you're part of the trafficking ring. In my view, you are part of it. You're allowing it to exist. We have a guest here from Santa Clara County, and we were talking earlier today about issues there. And it's not just about focusing on the victims and the girls and the problems with them and trying to provide services. It's also the demand. The trafficker is going to meet demand. The trafficker is just going to find someone else to exploit, abuse, harm, terrorize, and sell. Whether it's for labor trafficking or sex trafficking. So we have to address the demand, whether that's like taking your slavery footprint for labor trafficking or understanding that buyers are driving this issue and that they need to be prosecuted because the importance of prosecution, I couldn't agree more, would send the message if we were prosecuting the buyers, the predators, those people that are allowing this to exist. So that's kind of my answer on that. And then I'll let any of the panelists respond to.
On the criminalization and some of the changes in the law, what's really neat about the change now in 2012 where child welfare is going to take that lead. I mean, we heard kids as young as 12 and 14. I think it was Mark Twain, somebody can Google it and find out or not, but when you look at this, what he said is one can judge a society by the type of prisoners it keeps. And when you think about that and what is that if we treat these young people who are our victims as criminals and we're keeping them, that's how, in a sense, we're going to be judged. So some of these changes are really good. Changing that stigma is a lot of different things. And it's going to take everybody to do that. And I think empowerment and community outreach, the entire thing. But I always, we have a lot of folks here interested in social justice. And that was a quote that stuck with me some 30 years ago. And I think it still applies today. And some of the changes are helping prevent that.
This next question is for you if you want to keep it for a second. John, how much recruiting is taking place in juvenile hall or jail? Do you know that answer?
How much recruiting? No, because I'm not as in touch with the juvenile hall, but what I can say in the world that I live in now is that just by the data, we know all of our young people, right, 85% of them are at risk, okay? And she had mentioned the technology training that's going on. That is it's really crucial for parents, grandparents, and neighbors to get that training. But like we said, for the kids to get that training. The other thing that you can take from today, if you have grandkids, your own children, I have an 11-year-old, and this whole social networking thing, and that is the trap. It's not just the iPhone, but it's the social networking luring folks into that. So in my house, if you want to have a social networking, you don't get your daughter without getting me or her mom, and that's the rule. And we limit that. But there is so much that can be done on that front because kids have phones, they have access. So it's good the schools are going to get involved, but we as parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles, we all got to get involved. Foster parents too. So probation might have a bigger, response to that of how many they're seeing in the hall. It's been a number of years since I've worked closely with the hall, but I would imagine it's up there. And yeah, it's a beautiful community we have, but there's a lot of people passing through. Even in our small town, anybody read the newspaper? I live in Cayucas, 3,000 people, and there was a volunteer in the fire department, So, you're not safe anywhere, and it takes, efforts by everybody. So that number I really don't have, but we probably could get it, or at least ask if they could track it.
Yeah. Anybody else want to take a...
And it's not just the girls standing on the corner like it used to be. With social media, they're being marketed.
Yes.
There's so many different websites that are out there, and so you really got to pay attention to the social media end of it. And that even goes to the advertisement of the parties, the skip parties, where they lure the kids out to skip school, where they start the grooming process. There's several different ways that they prey on our youth, and we need to recognize all those and the use of the modern technology on how they're using it to get the customers, because that's what they are. They're buying something, and they just go shopping on the internet. Yeah. And our kids put way too much information on the internet, and it turns out to be a home shopping network for somebody who wants to buy. Yeah. And it's about education and limits that we put on there and knowing how to deal with that.
This next question I'm going to ask Greg to answer. What about the people who are paying for the victims?
In terms of
prosecuting them.
Prosecuting.
Unless you want to take a stab at what's wrong with their mindset.
So I want to make sure regrettably, I'm an attorney. I want to make sure I understand the question.
Can you phrase it, please?
So, how do we address the issue at the prosecution level of perpetrators?
The ones that are purchasing, buying, and creating the demand.
Well, it's a couple of fold. There's clearly a supply, and the supply is being met by the perpetrators. There is an industry or an ability to connect with young women, I'll just use young women, girls, who need to fill a vacuum. Some come through the foster system, some are
dysfunctional homes.
Right, I mean there's dysfunctional homes. I mean, a term sometimes that's used, regrettably, is a throwaway kid. And that male, and it can be female as well, will prey upon that and seize upon that opportunity. And sometimes it's quick, like the commander said, in terms of breaking somebody down as if they were a horse that needed to be saddled, or it's a slower process. It's giving this, giving that, giving something to that young person that he or she wants, that makes them feel better, that makes them more appreciated, that makes them ultimately feel more important. And when the buy-in happens, they're in a hole that they don't even realize that it's 8 feet deep. So it's these individuals who have, the perpetrators have an amazing ability to take advantage of a young person and zero in on that which the person is most vulnerable. And then it's he or she is doing something that they don't want to do, but they don't know how to get out. And that's the parallel with domestic violence. They don't want to be anymore, but they don't know how to get out. She doesn't want to participate in these activities anymore, but she doesn't know how to get out. So it is a global issue with trying to stop the demand, but it's also trying to stop the supply. And that's more, I think, where the community caretaking comes in, and being supportive of these young people that need the support that a community at a holistic level can provide.
Sorry, just a quick thought. She had mentioned restorative justice, and that's really a big piece of this, because if we're going to prevent it too, we've got to work with the perpetrators. Because the reality is, they're going to get out of juvenile hall, they're going to get out of jail, and if we hope to have them restored to the community in better shape than when they went in. And through my years and working with kids in juvenile hall, going to prisons, talking with lifers who got involved in that gang environment, one of the questions I always asked them was, what did the gang give you at some point in your life that your family didn't? And there's the catch for them. And they get hooked in and sucked in too, and then get into this criminal element. So I think restorative justice is really key. And I learned that through probation. You know, we do need to prosecute, we do need to incarcerate, but we owe it to society to try everything in our power when they come out, that they're safer when they left than when they came in. And there's a lot of work to be done on that.
Oh, wait. Just real quick. 90% of people who are the offenders of sexual assault were actually sexually assaulted themselves at one point, and so it's really addressing the need from the very beginning point, and again breaking that stigma of a victim, actually being able to come out and be supported with that. And again, it's a lot of times the perpetrators are people that were groomed at a young age to believe that disconnect is the way to be, and the lack of empathy and not knowing their victims is a huge part of it, and also to prove themselves to other people. I'm not condoning it in any way, shape, or form. I would say the education bill hopefully will have a huge impact in reducing that, because it's not only education of the victims to come out and build a community, but it's also for the perpetrators to realize that it is not okay.
So thanks for taking that on. So the other part of that question was kind of what's wrong with the mindset of so many men. It was inherited in men in our society and the world. So one of the things we know is that there are more people who view pornography now than at any other time in society. And that is a participatory activity, that's an action, it does things to your brain, people are addicted, and that there are unhealthy appetites, if you will, like unhealthy desires being created that then go get met on people they don't know or have empathy for, or think that they're not a victim because they've been told this lie that it's all their choice, or whatever the lie is. So we have to be careful in what we expose ourselves and others to. And even when I do presentations with law enforcement, I'm sorry, it's usually law enforcement that brings the very explicit slides and videos, we go through and we say, if that person was in the room today, would you show this? And we change it. Because we're not showing things out there for increasing people's awareness in that way. We want to, yes, increase your awareness that it's out there, but we don't want to go out and parade pictures that aren't necessary. And I think that sometimes we don't even know what we're looking at a lot of the times, and what our kids are looking at, and what that's creating. And once you're aware, I know you will get a splitting headache, like at all the things that will be coming at you, and you have to turn off and you have to turn around from and educate yourself on. But it's important at least to know that those things are meant to, they're advertisements, and they're meant to create this demand that they're creating and to feed a large industry. And then the next question kind of was already answered. It was victims beget victims. How can the past and present be diffused to prevent what could happen in the future, which is more victimization? And I think Restorative Partners had a great answer for that. Anybody else want to follow up on ending? I work with a program called I Empathize, and I could tell you more about empathy building as well. That's possible.
One of the other things I think is important is, I would say that if I asked you who feels like they have high standards for themselves, most of you in this room would raise their hands. We need to share those standards. We need to share them, and we need to hold each other accountable for them. It's not okay to laugh at jokes. I don't laugh at racial jokes. I don't laugh at jokes about children. I don't laugh at those things. People don't tell them to me. So then if I'm in a group, people aren't saying them. They're not telling them because my standards are high and I share that. And I think it's important. I think it's not okay for college-age guys to be ogling the junior high girls. So make that clear. That's not funny to laugh at. If a group of guys are together and they walk by, you need to say, oh, my God, they're probably 13. Not, wow, they're cute, or wow, they're making them different than they did when I was in junior high, which is a comment people have heard. Those aren't okay. And I think it's very important to hold our standards high and to tell our children they can hold their standards high and that they should hold them high and that they are so valued that they should stand up for that value and that we should stand up for it for them. And I think that's just crucially important.
Can you hold on to it?
Sure.
Next question. So where do most of the 100 to 300,000, which was the number that was referenced here, that is a rough number, rough estimate again, because we haven't been counting. Where do most of the children come from? Are they already within the U.S.? Are they domestic?
Of the 300,000, I would tell you that many of them are domestic, and I think we try to not want to believe that. I think that we want to say, that's not true, they're coming from other countries. That's not the case, they're here. There are children coming from other countries, and those get publicized, we see them on the media, and the little girl from Egypt, and we see that. Makes big press, but it's happening in our own county, in our own neighborhoods on a regular basis, and these are our children born here. And so I think we have to really change our mindset, that these are, listen to the kids. The story Carissa said of the older cousin in the car, she was listening, she was paying attention. We really need to watch and listen and pay attention and ask kids. Ask them why they're alone. Ask them why they're somewhere where they don't appear to have an adult with them. Talk to the kids who you know aren't going home to anyone else. If you have kids in school, see if they can come home and do their homework with your kids. It's really that simple. But it's making sure kids have caregivers and making sure that they're not those targets. But they are kids in our country. They're kids coming into our country. But they're also, many, many of them are the children in our county, in our country. In child welfare, you know, there's this thought out there that they're either the socioeconomic, lower level socioeconomic, or that they're of different countries. That is not true. The majority of the kids in our care are white, middle-class American children. So, and those are kids that are abused and neglected.
Thank you. And those are under 18. And then Brenda and I were having a conversation about even students, especially students, because I work with survivors who were at one time recruited or targeted as college students are also being victimized. So we have another population, people away from home with vulnerabilities that possibly are looking to media to see, okay, that seems like an all right thing to do.
And it's kids from
And
good
we're not-
families
good
as
families
well.
and
yes.
The other, just real quick thing is there, and I don't have a number on it, but there are cases that I've known of where you have American citizens, the kids we're talking about, that are overseas traveling and get abducted into that ring too. So the other thing is, if you have young college kids in your circle that are traveling overseas, you got to talk about all those things about how to take care of yourself, because there are cases of that too, and we really need to be mindful of that.
yeah, I've worked with a young woman who was brave enough to stand up to a family trafficking, and she was being trafficked to Yemen over the summers and then brought back, and like as if everything was normal back here. And so she was able to be rescued because of a teacher that was aware and that stepped in, and then all the other systems that stepped in as well to help. A couple more questions, and then I do want to leave that time for. Do we have any more questions? Do we have any questions on this end?
Peter does about diocese.
Hi, Peter.
Unmute, Peter.
Hi, Carissa. Carissa, I'd like to thank you and Ellen for all that you guys do and for your time tonight. Your story about the auntie in the car really affected me. I'm wondering, is there training that San Luis Obispo County and San Benito County, Monterey County, and Santa Cruz County offers? I'd really like to get more information on the type of media training available as well. I'm the Director of Communications and Information Technology for the diocese, and so I think this really is important for my role here as well. Thank you.
Thanks for that question, because then I get to talk about my friend and colleague, Rachel Thomas, again. So Rachel is with Peter. She's with Sowers Education Group, so I can connect you directly. And then I know she'll be coming back in, I'm pretty sure. She'll be coming back into the area. She's coming out to, actually she's driving through on her way to Salinas. We're going to be in Salinas on Friday if you want to meet us there, and you can meet her. But she does a great education and media training, and we'll be there at the Monterey, basically the county building in Salinas from 1 to 5 p.m. and she'll be a part of that presentation in Salinas, so we can see how to connect her to this work too, and bring that to parents and make it very, very relevant to parents and caregivers. And were there any more on this one?
There's one other site. Is that Spreckles, Peter?
I can see it. Let me check.
This is so foreign to me.
Yes, it is. Spreckles any questions? Nope, I don't think we have any questions over there, Terry. Thanks.
Well, we'll be coming into town soon, so we can see him on Friday too. The last final question, and this is what I want to leave everybody with as they go out to network. Please explain how those who still see women sold on the streets, especially those over 18 as prostitutes, can change their paradigm to viewing them as victims. That is your work. That's your work. How do you do that? How do you erase all those other messages that have come in? You get to know survivors. You get to know me, you get to know Caitlin, you get to know our team, you get to know the people who work on this issue and come frontline, close to it, and know the facts, and your paradigm will shift. So thank you very much. Thank you to our panelists.